Because we as a collective, we always insist that we embark from outside and transfer to inside. I really don't think that people from outside should know deep our economy. That's very important.
I don't understand why not.
Because we are not corporations. And frankly to say, I can tell, because no one should understand how cheap our book could be. How cheap things can cost.
But why wouldn't you reveal that in order to begin the discussion about how cheap your labour is?
The answer is to raise discussion, but not so that.
Well, I think then we hit a stoppage here. So I think that we need to find ways to move between the requirement for opacity, which was mentioned earlier on, and the politics of transparency. You wanted to say something? Yeah.
Dmitry said it in some way. For us, the situation is the same in terms of I don't want a financial transparency on the outside because it's something which is imposed. It comes from our funder, our funders. Our funders have scarce understanding of our working practices, which basically means if I will be following all the instructions that they are asking me to do, I will not be able to neither produce nor reproduce, which is what we are doing. So I'm completely with Dmitry on internal transparency, external opacity. This is absolutely the principle.
To say hi to you, we met on a Skype once, right? Right. Finally. Yeah, I'm with Dmitry. Totally also, no, like we work like that, and also we are cooperative. We're not an institution. Neither want to be an institution. And we also tell comrades, if you feel this word is suitable for you, to go into the production of more cooperative of artists rather than institutions, or cooperative of people that have imagination or humans that produce with imagination, for not to say artists, no? Curators, theorists, academics, punks, whatever you want to call yourself, into doing more cooperatives, because then I find it super problematic. First of all, this idea to have an action plan and go like, yes, really, no, not again. My action plan would be to have the time to study in a profound deep way. Is that an action plan everyone would like to have for the institution? To really have a commitment to do a deep study of reality context, as the Zapatistas did for 20 years. They studied their context and they did an insurrection, and now they have for 20 years autonomous infrastructure, right? We don't need that. What I was trying to say is the problem of the institution for us in our context is that we see that if we become an institution, we become deeply dependent on funders all our lives, because institutions have costs. And what happens when these costs, let's say when the state is falling, no? In our case, we have it mixes kind of welfare state, kind of neoliberal or totally neoliberal state. So becoming an institution will only put us in the problem of becoming, first of all, kind of petrified, second of all, needed of patrons. And what we want to do is destroy the patrons, right? As a cooperative, I'm talking about, of course. So we don't want to become an institution. And actually, we would really say to all the people that want to organize differently to not become an institution, rather to become collectives, real collectives, and become cooperatives or become mutual aid organizations that produce something else than institutional value, right? So to try to link something back, what can we do? What does art do? In this context, it damages health. It damages the health of individuals and of the collectives. So this is something that is serious, right? It's fucking our minds and our hearts and our bodies. It's getting us worried, it's getting us incapable of having the capacity to act, no? Of action. So rest, maybe we need to rest more in this kind of year, just come to rest. Instead of hyper-productivism, right? And the other thing is that we need to study. We really need to study together. We really need to make the time to make off space for collective study that is deep enough and not project-based, not founders' time project-based. Study that can go outside the catalogs of power, and a study that can become an energetic power for the re-articulation of us. We're not special people. We're ants of this fucking industry. We're just ants, nothing more than that. So as ants, we can see ourselves again as a power force, a labor force. And we go beyond competitivity. We can recognize ourselves as workers again, and workers that can, or labor, whatever suits you better, workers that can again find themselves with the potency of revolutionary, something that makes a big change, right? So, just to end, for me, don't go so quick. And this slow motion must not become something where we get more funding because we have the concepts. Slow motion is really trying not to get to conclusions so fast.
Okay, thank you. I think I feel that I don't know whether I can say this, completely agree with you on many of the issues that you have said. However, what I'm trying to do here is negotiate between different forms that are in this room, yeah? So this isn't just to do with technical forms, like whether you're formed as a cooperative or an institution that has a board of trustees for funding reasons, etc. But of course, it's also to do with ways of working. You know, there are many institutions in this room that have things at the moment that are called artistic directors, for instance, yeah? And you don't. And there will be many other people in this room that don't. But if we're trying to work towards something common, then we need to find a way to negotiate those differences. So what I'm trying to do is see if we can begin to build up, and taking into account everything you said about slowness and study. I'm with you there, obviously that's my profession as well. But I don't see why we couldn't all agree to try and articulate feminism as a starting point, whatever mode that we're working through. For instance, what I'm trying to do here, and you're right, I'm forcing the point, of course I am, is try and find a way that we can begin to build a set of statements or values that we can put our names to. And then when we can put our names to, we then need to join with all the other people that have already started to do this. This is not the first gathering that's been like this, although it's unique in the group of people that it's got together. But there are other organizations that have formed out of situations such like this. And we need to work with them, not set ourselves up as just another passionate ending, yeah? So I think it would be good if we could begin to write our names on this piece of paper if we want to carry on finding ways to work together across our differences. And I'm now going to hand over to Binna, but where she's put addresses, and I think she didn't mean it to be like this, but I'm going to put my address there to say that I'd like to work with any of you who will be interested in developing a set of values that we can ascribe to collectively across the different types of methodologies that we use to produce our work. Bill.
Addressing men for that.
But I'm going to change it.
I'm going to change it about us. All right.
So you are signing up yourself.
Right, I'm signing up about 100 people.
But you can represent, or maybe you mind articulating further what it is, what do you mean with addressing in your case?
I would like to develop a set of, I'd like to work with people in this room to develop a set of forms of protection, history telling, and value production that we can begin to articulate, that we then project out, which doesn't stop those people in the room that also want capacity. We have to negotiate that. But I think we need to do it. We need to begin to do it. And I say that on the basis that I know this is not the first time it's happened. But let's continue that history of struggle.
Well, to continue that struggle, but dealing with this kind of paradox that we always need more time, but we at the same time need to accelerate, and that we are accelerating. We are now at 6:15, so 15 minutes behind our schedule. So I'd like to say that we just take 15 minutes more to conclude today. How does it work for you? It is fine. Anyone who object or feel uncomfortable?
No, I would like to ask a question. I just want to have a question. Me too, yeah. But I was waiting before you and you already spoke once. Maybe twice actually. So my question is, that was yesterday and you also spoke yesterday. So it's I mean, but I've been waiting all afternoon to sort of speak. So you said something about you saw huge problems at this biennale, or you said all biennales, but let's talk about this biennale. So I wasn't really clear. You were really alluding to some problems at this biennale or not, and if there are, we've all been here, we've all seen the show. I've been actually here from August 14. I've witnessed it going up piece by piece, and I'm aware of some of the problems that I've seen myself. So I was just wondering, what does this comment relate to? Anything? Because I tried to bring it up to you as well again last night at the dinner that there's this thing here about a biennale being done really well in terms of organizationally and infrastructurally and fairness versus the biennale actually producing good work of art. Putting good work of art on the surface that actually does something in the realm of art, which means generation of meaning, symbolic generation of aesthetics, proliferation of new forms, etc., etc. And sometimes you can have both. You can have really problematic ways of a show coming together, but at the end, what's out there is really awesome. Or you can have everything is done right, everything is done on time, everybody's treated well, but the work sucks. And sometimes you can have different hybrids of these two. So this is something that I think we should discuss, because at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Of course, in the ideal world, you want to have a really structurally sound exhibition and produce new forms, new aesthetics, and all sorts of stuff that happens on the surface of the exhibition. But what do you do with these situations in which there's some kind of like conflict or disjointedness between the two? But let's not forget that you brought up the fact that there's been problems in the Biennale. So I'm just saying.
I framed my comments on the basis that this is taking place within the mind and that we shouldn't forget that.
Dimitri, you want to say?
I wanted to ask because you start quite strong and very clear-cut proposition. Okay, are we feminist institution? Are we anti-racist and so on? I think we should continue this line. And actually, especially even on the level of feminism, why not some differentiate? We are queer institution. Maybe feminism is too strict in some way. But then, very also direct question to the whole audience, are we institution who can work under Creative Commons license? That creates difference. Because we have a lot of copywriting here, all your activities. Okay, Kranjo Biennale we understand. And we also understand the pressure to a copyright institutional activity, from design to whatever. But at the same time, do you allow materials produced by your institution to be free distributed? This is a crucial question, and that's beginning. It's a very long step. It's for me even more crucial than the issue of feminist, queer, anti-racist, which is pretty obvious in some sense. But this is crucial.
People might think that they're anti-racist.
People might think they're anti-racist, and my name's Angelica Saka. I'm from the Otolith group, but the Otolith Collective is a public organisation that Kojo and I run in London, and we are artists that curate, just to make that clear. So you're going to get like bits of news from both sides. So, I remember once, actually this has happened quite a lot, but the reason we called ourselves the Otolith Group is so people would stop asking us where we're from. Not because we wanted to do away with our historical political background. We have a faithfulness to it, as G used this term earlier about kind of faithfulness to your history and to your place that you might call home in some way. But because we wanted to complicate that, right? I remember once we really had this idea of wanting to do a residency in a given city in Europe. And we were told, we had heard that the board on 2 occasions had said, we're not going to give them a residency because they're British artists. They are not really Indian and they are not really African. Because we are living in London. This is racist, right? What is it saying about sort of the question and the instability and the precarious nature of life for migrants in a country like Britain, where an institution like the Tate can now just say, oh, we've invited an African artist, we've invited an Indian group, we've invited these people that circulate all the time. We don't need to think about race politics and inequality in Britain anymore, because we are all international. Internationalism has become a new way of being racist because it's about spreading ideas of authenticity. So when we talk about tokenism, that's what we mean. It's a tokenism that is kind of an industrial art tokenism now. And it is all about markets. It's all about gentrifying biennales, summits, gentrification processes, Also, in this situation, what is, why is it that people don't want to deal with, I mean, I'll give you an example. In London recently, we did an event with Fred Moten, and 120 young black people of colour came to our event. Something like 120, maybe sort of 15, 20 people from Goldsmiths or something. But mainly, it wasn't in an institution. I mean, it wasn't in an arts space necessarily. It was in a kind of free school, but we were using the hall. Anyway, it was very nice, and all these people came, and they were all very much identified around being British, right? But it doesn't mean that they are not complex. It doesn't mean that, London has always been a city where there have been ships and flows of people for 300, 400 years. So when I say, are we at, and also another incident, again, in a given city in Europe, we've made a film called In the Year of the Quiet Sun on Pan-Africanism and on stamps. We were told, some guy came up to me and said, you're not really African and he's not really African, so how can we make a film about Africa, right? So there are all these confusions about sort of authenticity that are really, really shitty and racist. So, these are, when that gentleman over there said we need to have some time to discuss this stuff, that's kind of like a good example. What do people mean when they say they're anti-racist now? That's what I'd like to know. What do they actually mean?
Great. Thanks. So unfortunately, we cannot take more comments and questions. Otherwise, we will leave with very, very incomplete sense of a sense of incompleteness, and we cannot complete anyway. But I think it would be good to feel some kind of latency together. And I'd like to address, you mentioned that Dimitri interrupted you twice, but you were very assertive twice. There's one comment who didn't speak at all today and who was speaker yesterday. You mind that I give him the microphone as well? A short one, very short one.
영어로 말할 수가 없어서 죄송합니다. 그런데
So first of all, I'd like to ask your understanding because I'm not quite fluent in English.
어저께 그 자리에서 같이 얘기하고 있었고 조용히 해달라고 그랬고 오늘도 또 그러셔서요. 그런데 저는 비엔날레가 있을 때 주변에서 그렇게 시끄럽게 떠들어주는 것이야말로 비엔날레라고 생각합니다.
I believe that the essence of Biennale is creating a lot of noises. We should make a noise. That is the essence of Biennale.
그리고 저는 그게 바로 컨택트 존이라고 생각합니다.
I believe in that sense Biennale can be contact zone.
그래서 여기 안에 제가 어제 얘기했었던 거는 제가 하루 동안 정말 많은 것을 생각했어요.
So just over one day, I had a lot of considerations.
여기 오기 전에는 그냥 접촉이라는 것을 미술 공간 안에 접촉이라는 것을 상상해보지 못하고 왔죠.
But before I came here, I have a very limited idea about contact, just a contact within the art space.
근데 와서 보면서 제도와 관련해서 얼마나 많은 존들이 생기고 있는가라는 걸 알게 됐어요. 그리고 그게 옛날보다 훨씬 많은 방식으로 행정이나 제도랑 긴밀하게 연관되고 있는 것도 알게 됐어요.
After I listened to your discussions participating in these Biennale forums, I found that there are so many contact zones within our institutions and systems, and those are interconnected in terms of institutionalizations and administration aspect as well.
그래서 그 안에 있는 그 건강성을 지켜가는 것에 대해서 오늘 진짜 중요한 얘기를 많이 들었다고 생각해요. 시간이 없으니까 언급하지 않을게요.
I heard so meaningful discussions today. Because of time constraints, I'm not going to repeat all the discussions we had, but I believe it's very important to keep the soundness within the system.
그렇지만 저는 예술가가 아니니까 예술가나 표현자가 따로 있다고 생각하지 않고 모든 사람들이 표현자가 되는 그런 세상을 꿈꿔요. 그렇기 때문에 마지막에 제도 밖을 계속 생각해야 한다. 우리 안에서 다른 방식의 접촉의 방식을 만들어야 한다라는 이야기에 굉장히 동의했고 오늘 그런 말씀을 나누기 위해서 와 계셨다고 생각해요. 그래서 마지막으로 정말 한마디 이걸 둘러싼 수많은 자본이야말로 정말 비엔날레다 이런 말씀을 꼭 드리고 싶었어요. 왜냐하면 제가 그 자리에 있었기 때문에 그 자리가 저희가 말한 자리가 권위를 가진 자리가 되지 않기를 정말 바랍니다.
Well, I believe not only artists, but also all the people can express themselves. And we can have various contact zones and we can pursue various ways in order to contact among all of us. And I sincerely hope that we can continuously make noises in this Biennale. That is my sincere hope. And I also believe that and hope that this Biennale should be not so authoritative. And I myself experienced that yesterday, so I felt that.
I have 1 minute to conclude. And actually, my clock is 3 minutes faster, so 4 minutes. Well, like I just like to share some common points that emerged for last 2 hours, and then I like to hear from Andreas whether these could be seen, this could be articulated as action points. First one is the life and work balance. There was a saying that Biennale damaged health. And in relation to that, we have question of quality and versus quantity. So, like, let's do less. But it's very conflictual propositions along with the desire and then the necessity to be present. So how do we do less while being present in this field and beyond? So there are like 5 comments, 5 remarks. And first, in relation to that, there was an idea. I think this is really a concrete action point. Where is it? The co-production. Oh yes, great. Thank you. So can we kind of undo the problem of ego as a curator or director? And can we give space to let go? And on the condition of those, can we work with same artists or project or coordinate our production? Well, then new terms, because we need a common vocabularies to speak, but also to avoid the notion that makes us stuck in the system that we know. So, like instead of neighborhood, we could talk about context zone or conflict zones, or community of becoming. And then we had question of growth. So like sustainability or continuity is one of the key issues that we wanted to address, but it's not that we want that our organization to be permanent. So question of growth and death, and growing or dying. And that leads us to think of the memory of institutions and history of institutions. So when institutions get closed, maybe there is a place or institution and infrastructure to keep the memory and distribute. So institutional graveyard was proposed as an idea in Brisbane. It is also to understand how things can change. And that, I think, is another way of saying how we can be independent and subjectively deciding whether institution continue or not by external pressure or funding. Then the right to opacity, I think it's connected with the diffuse tokenism, which Angelica emphasis on. So how we can avoid self-authentication that might have to do with the funding pressure. And there is like right to opacity and invisibility and being underground as useful tactics while we're keeping transparency within our organization or our collective or cooperative. And this is one of the actually thematic strands that we have in the exhibition. So from these several ideas, so next to the idea of making institutional graveyard, actually it was a very, very concrete proposal, like writing a letter to the Country Biennale Foundation to make the next biennial in a form of forum instead of an exhibition, or next to an exhibition. And then other concrete proposal is that artists and art organization actually be together. But please note that there are many artists here too, who have double hat. But next to problem and possibility of there are too many artists. So what Jiyoung said is that there should be many artists outside of the institutional framework, but there are also comment on there are actually so many artists within the institutional context, which might have to do with the ego problem. It's not new curator directors. More artists. And then time to study and lobbying group in relation to information about funders, relation with the funders, could we say? And problem of institutional constitutions and how we can protect with each other. And then institutional chart in defense of artists. So this is kind of, I think, what we harvested, kind of map of our discussions. So now, like my question is, what we can take on with us to continue from here? You'd like to respond?
I think that's one that as a pragmatist and somebody that's been slightly simple at the end of 2 days, I would suggest that we take on the institutional graveyard because we have a proposition for a location. Where are the Brisbane people? And then we try and hang as much of the rest of it around the graveyard. Yeah. So, over to Brisbane.
We can come back to race. Yeah. You want to respond?
Very quick. We actually thought that, well, Brisbane was.
Sure, while Brisbane was raised, you know, in this kind of doomsday end of world scenario as a place where the archives would be safe, we actually thought, as many groups did, about the interrelationship between the small and the large, and that a lot gets taken out of us and extracted into the large, but actually, maybe there are museums that care for things anyway that should take on caring for the lost institutions. Yeah, they should buy them so that we can actually generate income by our archives so that they can have longevity and new things can grow from its resources.
And more? What do you think of the idea of writing a letter to the foundation?
That other remain. Again, the idea of
So if we were to write a letter to the foundation, I asked them under the name of whom. And then we were requested to, signing off eventually. And then I think it led to the earlier discussion. We are going back. But I think I heard that it wasn't writing letters to the biannual foundation to replace the exhibition with a forum, but to make sure the forum carries on. That's what I heard, but I can't remember. In a sustainable way, yeah.
One more. Okay, then is there any last comment? Feedback, request for song? So we are now at 20 to meeting that Meteor Group. They opened their solo show by Korean artist Jin Kim 40 minutes ago, and then we have 1 or 2 more hours to go. So